Thank you so much for your patience, folks. You got to see behind the curtain tonight. Ta-da! So my name is Liz Reed. I'm head of adult services here at the Morrill Memorial Library. I recognize a lot of faces, and I'm seeing new faces, and I'm so happy to see all of you here tonight on such a chilly winter evening for a very important topic. So we have lots of refreshments over there, thanks to our lovely hosts this evening. And if you need the restroom, just head out past the reference desk and turn right. And thank you very much to our Friends group for supporting so many of our programs here at the library. And thank you to Norwood Community Media, who's joining us this evening to help us reach an even wider audience with this very important talk tonight. So we're already a few minutes behind, so I'm going to turn things over right away to Marty. Please take it away.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Liz, and the Norwood Library for inviting us here tonight. I'll introduce myself, and Rosette, my friendly wife, will introduce herself. I'm a resident of Sharon. Sorry about that. But nonetheless, we're here because we think this is a very important topic. My background is actually immunology. I will not be giving any talk on immunology tonight, but perhaps if you're interested some other time. Rosette, take it away. Here's the microphone. Why don't you stand in front of the microphone?
Okay. I'm from Belgium, and I'm also a scientist. Okay, my degree is in biophysics. We've been working, both Marty and I, in science and in management of science. So we have a lot of upper managerial experience. I'm a Holocaust survivor. Okay, probably the youngest Holocaust survivor you will ever meet, because I was a baby at the end of the Second World War. But I lost a lot of family. Basically, we had no uncles, no aunts, no cousins. Everyone was dead. It was killed during the Holocaust. I don't know how many of my close family were killed. Like, no, huge amount. In the class where I was in first grade. I was in a Jewish day school in Antwerp, Belgium. We had 30 kids in the class. Out of 30 kids, we had 4 grandmothers and 1 grandfather, and that's it for 30 kids. Okay, so just to give you the reason why for me it's terribly important to work on anti-Semitism, because that's something that we can do. And that's why we have written this program. You can sit here.
Okay, no more technical issues, hopefully. I just want to also express my thanks to your own Beth Goldman for getting us involved in this fine institution. Okay.
It's a pleasure. And generally speaking, I mean, I didn't direct them first. Usually I have to tell them how to behave. But this was a pretty good group.
Okay. Let's up front state that hate is hate. And none of us want to live in a society where hate is prevalent. But hate generally follows a very similar pattern. It can be called the pyramid of hate because it starts out somewhat innocuously, stereotyping people, name calling, that sort of things at the lower level. Then you get things like bullying and more. And then discrimination. Discrimination is excluding people from your club, from your place of work, etc., because of bias. And then it evolves to violence, and at the last end, it's genocide. And the world has seen many genocides. So why focus on anti-Semitism? Okay, it's one form of hate. Now, the Jewish population in the US is about 2% of the population, but in terms of hate crimes, I'm not talking about hate in general, because without the crime element, it's not a hate crime. Jews experience about 15% of all hate crimes. And these are statistics from the FBI from 2023. When you look at the FBI statistics comparing 2022 and 2023, hate crimes against Jews actually have risen 68%. And this was on an FBI report, again, in 2023. And this statistic is a bit strange. We all know that anti-black hate is very prevalent in the United States. But in looking at 2023, at the 10 largest cities in the US, anti-Semitic hate crimes surpassed anti-black hate crimes. And this is data from the Center for Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University. So anti-Semitism is on the rise, and it's a problem. So this doesn't happen in some other state. This also happens in Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, the data roughly parallels the data that you see across the US. And as a percent of the population in Massachusetts, anti-Jewish hate is the highest of any bias group. Now, many of us are familiar with some of the riots and demonstrations on college campuses and so forth. This anti-Semitic hate doesn't only occur on college campuses. Here we see hate crime statistics from K through 12 schools. And this involves both up to violence, it involves vandalism, and it involves harassment. So I'd like you to see this very short video because I think it puts anti-Semitism in a historical context.
Do you want the lights up?
Martin,
I think we can see it with lights on.
Okay.
Is that okay? Or
Living memory of the
Can we see?
Holocaust,
Can
after
we
which
stop
the
it for a
world
second?
said it would never happen
Okay.
again.
We want to say that this video has been made
In
in 2013.
yeah, the video.
Within living memory
Wait,
of
let
the
me
Holocaust,
just
after which
state
the
that
world
again.
said
So the video was put together by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who was the chief rabbi of the UK. He is deceased since, and it was put together in 2013. It's as relevant today as any time. Whoops.
Within living memory of the Holocaust, after which the world said it would never happen again, anti-Semitism has returned. But what is anti-Semitism? And why should its return be cause for grave concern, not only for Jews, but for all of us? Historically, anti-Semitism has been hard to define because it expresses itself in such contradictory ways. Before the Holocaust, Jews were hated because they were poor and because they were rich, because there were communists and because there were capitalists. Nothing. So what is anti-Semitism? Let's be clear. Not liking people because they're different isn't anti-Semitism. It's xenophobia. Criticizing Israel isn't anti-Semitism. It's part of the democratic process, and Israel is a democracy. Anti-Semitism is something much more dangerous. It means persecuting Jews and denying them the right to exist collectively as Jews with the same rights as everyone else. It's a prejudice that, like a virus, has survived over time by mutating. So in the Middle Ages, Jews were persecuted because of their religion. In the 19th and 20th centuries, they were reviled because of their race. Today, Jews are attacked because of the existence of their nation-state, Israel. Denying Israel's right to exist is the new anti-Semitism. And just as anti-Semitism has mutated, so has its legitimation. Each time, as the persecution descended into barbarity, the persecutors reached for the highest form of justification available. In the Middle Ages, it was religion. In post-Enlightenment Europe, it was science, the so-called scientific study of race. Today, it's human rights. Whenever you hear human rights invoked to deny Israel's right to exist, you are hearing the new anti-Semitism. So, why has it returned? There are many reasons, but one root cause is the cognitive failure called scapegoating. When bad things happen to a group, its members can ask one of two questions. What did we do wrong? Or who did this to us? The entire fate of the group will depend on which it chooses. If it asks, what did we do wrong? It has begun the process of healing the harm. But if instead it asks, who did this to us? It's defined itself as a victim. It will then seek a scapegoat to blame for all its problems. Classically, this has been the Jews, because for 1,000 years they were the most conspicuous non-Christian minority in Europe, and today, because Israel is the most conspicuous non-Muslim country in the Middle East. The argument is always the same. We are innocent, therefore they are guilty. Therefore, if we are to be free, they, the Jews or the state of Israel, must be destroyed. That is how the great evils begin. Why then should we all care about this? After all, if we're not Jewish, what has it got to do with us? The answer is that anti-Semitism is about the inability of a group to make space for difference. And because we're all different, the hate that begins with Jews never ends with Jews. It wasn't Jews alone who suffered under Hitler. It wasn't Jews alone who suffered under Stalin. It isn't Jews alone who suffer under the radical Islamists and others who deny Israel's right to exist. Anti-Semitism is the world's most reliable early warning sign of a major threat to freedom, humanity, and the dignity of difference. It matters to all of us, which is why we must fight it together.
Okay, so again, this video was produced in 2013, and we believe it's relevant today. So, in less elegant words, we can define anti-Semitism as marginalization or oppression of Jewish people based on belief in stereotypes and myths about Jewish people, Zionism, and Israel. So what is Zionism? It's been battered around for the past several years as something very, very negative. Put very simply, it's the movement for Jewish self-determination and statehood. Just like Italian Americans show fondness and connection to Italy, and Greek Americans show fondness and connection to Greece. Jewish Americans show connection to Israel. So, anti-Zionism that is clearly anti-Semitic is when it employs dehumanizing language, denies Jewish rights to self-determination, and holds Jews collectively responsible for Israel's action. Being critical of Israeli policies is not anti-Semitic. Personally, I'm critical of a lot of Israel's policies, just as I'm critical of a lot of policies of our government. But we won't go into those things right now. So, what are some of the stereotypes or tropes of Jews? There's always been this myth of power. The Jews control space lasers that are causing forest fires in California. That's absolutely true. Yeah. Now, the myth of power, I mean, Jews comprise 0.2% of the world population. If Jews were very powerful, they must be extremely powerful with that percent of the population. The myth of greed has always been there, and a lot of it derives from historical situation where Jews were prevented from joining any of the guilds in Europe. And so the only profession, if you will, was money lending, and hence the attachment of Jews to money. And you see some of these stereotypes today, even in our area, where not that long ago, if a sports team was playing on the field, and there happened to be a lot of, or some Jews on the other side of the team, they throw pennies on the field. This is obviously a stereotype and not very conducive to good sportsmanship or good citizenship. The myth of disloyalty. The Jews only care about Israel and other Jews. Well, I think that can be easily disproven. Jews have been certainly heavily involved in many civil rights movements and in fighting for gay rights, in fighting for racial equality, and so on. So, and then you have the myth of deicide. For many years, including well into the past century, Jews have been accused of killing Christ, and this didn't help Jews very, very much in history. And the myth that anti-Zionism or criticism of Israel is never anti-Semitic, we showed that criticism without denying rights and so forth is certainly not anti-Semitic. So let's talk about October 7th, 2023. A terrorist organization named Hamas entered Israel in the south and killed over 1,200 individuals, civilians, babies, elderly, not only killed them, raped, mutilated, burned, and not only did this occur, but multiple Israelis, over 250 actually, and others were taken captive and brought into Gaza, and the ones who lived and who have returned, talk about the torture and the starvation and so on and so forth. There's still currently 59 hostages somewhere in tunnels in Gaza, either alive or dead. And it was the largest single-day anti-Semitic act since the Holocaust. This greatly affected many Jews. Now, Hamas is considered as a terrorist organization by multiple countries, and its radical Islamic view is elimination of the State of Israel and, if it can go further than that, eliminating other Jews and perhaps other people. And this is their firm belief. When you heard Hamas spokesmen speak early into the war that followed the October 7th event, they didn't care if 200,000 Palestinians in Gaza would die. That wasn't important. What was important was eliminating the Jews. Now, on one day after October 7th, another terrorist group, Hezbollah, in Lebanon, a different extremist group, invaded and started attacking Israel. Now, why is the current surge in anti-Israel rhetoric anti-Semitic? Now, this may not be that easily understood, but Jewish identity doesn't relate only to a religion. It relates to a culture, a nationhood, and Israel matters to most Jews. So when over 1,200 Israeli Jews were murdered on October 7th, this was taken quite personally by many U.S. and world Jews. And denying the right for Israel to exist for many Jews implies denying the right of Jews to exist. And, you know, when, obviously people like statistics, but when 85% of U.S. Jews were given the statement that denying Israel's right to exist is anti-Semitic, they agreed with that statement. So on TV and on college campuses, we see all sorts of slogans that may mean nothing to most people, but they mean a lot to many Jews. For instance, one of the slogans is, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Well, it sounds like people trying to pursue freedom and so on and so forth. Sounds pretty good, right? But what river, what sea? When the river, they're talking about the Jordan River, and the sea, they're talking about the Mediterranean Sea. The only thing in between there is Israel. So they're talking about the elimination of Israel. They're not talking about the freedom of Palestine. And why do I say this? This statement was actually conceived way before Hamas. This was conceived by Yasser Arafat from the Fatah. And he used this as the rallying cry to destroy Israel. So it's not actually a very humanistic statement. Then you see slogans now like globalize Intifada now. And many people have no idea what this means. Rosette and I happened to live in Israel during the Second Intifada, and what it means is random terror. So every other day there'd be a bus exploding or a restaurant bombed. And so when they talk about globalizing the Intifada, that's even beyond Israel. And in some instances you see that in places like, actually yesterday, Munich, in New Orleans, etc. So this is not, again, a statement for human rights. And resistance by any means necessary is a call to support terrorism and murder of civilians. Now, you also hear that Israel is accused of committing genocide. And I think a lot of people forget what the meaning of genocide is. Genocide is an attempt to destroy, in whole or part, a whole people or ethnic or racial or religious group. That certainly is not what is happening in Gaza. You cannot compare that to either what happened in Rwanda or what happened during the Holocaust. Are there people being killed in Gaza? Yes, and everyone regrets death of human life. You kill one person, you kill part of the world. But Hamas has embedded itself in a civilian population. And in this situation where women, children, other non-combatants are in the middle of areas where they have missile launchers and so on and so forth, there is going to be civilian death. So Hamas, and the same thing, it's interesting, the same thing happened in Lebanon with Hezbollah. Hezbollah went into villages, peaceful villages on the border with Israel, built tunnels, put rocket launchers in homes, and started shooting. What is Israel to do? You have to protect your people. In fact, over 80,000 people living near the northern border had to relocate to other places in Israel.
Southern border also.
And the southern border as well.
They're not all relocated where they were
Yeah.
supposed to be.
So the word genocide is used inappropriately to demonize the state of Israel. Now, just a little geography lesson. When you heard the video or saw the video from Jonathan Sachs, he mentioned Israel as the only non-Islamic country in the Middle East. And just the proportions give you some idea. That little yellow area represents Israel. By the way, just so people understand.
I'm just going to point it out because it was so unbelievably tiny. Sliver, that teeny.
Do you need a ladder?
I could jump, but it won't be pretty. Yeah, it is so unbelievably tiny. It is important for people.
Yeah.
To realize.
No, but one has to understand, Israel is not a homogeneous society. 25% of the Israeli population, I'm not talking about disputed territories or anything, are either Muslim or Christian. And they have,
20% are Muslims
and 5% are Christian. And they have equal rights. They're in the parliament. They're doctors, lawyers, etc. So painting, and we'll get into other things, painting binary pictures of the Mideast, the good guys, the bad guys, is not very helpful. So what can we do about anti-Semitism and hate in general? First of all, know yourself. Biologically, we're programmed to be concerned about others. In the old days, in the caveman times, you had your territory, they had their territory. It was a zero-sum game. If they went into your territory, you had less. And but hopefully we've moved beyond that. So know that you have these prejudices and so forth, and try to deal with them, not exploit them. The second point I want to focus on a bit more later, but be alert to simplicity. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. Seek validated information. Go to your library. Read sources that are validated. But most importantly, meet people from other groups. Try to understand them, what their issues are, what their fears are, what their desires are. That's helpful. So we talk about simplified way of thinking, or it's sometimes known as binary bias. Something is black or white, someone is a colonialist or is being colonized, etc. And again, this sort of thinking is something that we are programmed with for the reasons I gave before. If there's a line there, you have two choices: stay and be eaten or run. We're not where we were then, although there's some question about where we're going. So the idea of avoiding the simplified way of thinking is become more granular in your thoughts, because we're imposing categories where there are continuum. And where there are continuum, we have to delve deeper in trying to understand a situation and not make flash judgments. So this position about simplistic thinking and so on is also supported by the Massachusetts Board of Secondary and Elementary Education, which wants to review all educational and instructional materials for this sort of thinking and demeaning generalizations. And I certainly support this attempt, although there are other parts of the Teachers Association that are going in the opposite direction. So let's look at binary bias against Israel, just as an example. The dogma on college campuses is Israel's a white colonialist power displacing colored indigenous people. First of all, many of these people have never been to Israel because it is one of the most multicultural societies you can. Multicolored, multicultural, etc. Over 50% of Israelis' Jewish population came from North Africa and the Middle East and Asia. So first of all, the white colonialist power, not so much. And Britain was the occupier of the land of Israel prior to 1948, and prior to that, the Ottoman Empire was the occupier of the area. And to state that Jews never had a connection with Israel is quite a lie. There have been Jews living in Israel throughout history. I can't say anything before 1000 BC, but certainly up to the present time. And in fact, for many hundreds of years, Jews were the majority of population in Jerusalem. Okay, so Israel's not white. Jews are not occupiers, etc. There was a war in 1948. There was a partition plan in 1948. Unfortunately, the Arab armies, fortunate for Israel, lost the war, and there was movement of, some say forced, some say, should we say, encouraged, and movement of about 800,000 Palestinians living then, which was all of Israel. But there was an equal movement of 800,000 Jews from Arab countries. Mm-hmm. And that is something totally ignored. So, I want to thank you for listening. What I have here are some objects that represent time and the fact that there are still hostages in tunnels in Gaza, living under unacceptable conditions. And I open for discussion.
Oh, please.
Yes.
How dangerous is it for Jewish people in Massachusetts right now?
How dangerous?
It's a good question, by the way.
It's a very good question, and it depends on what situation you're in. For instance, let's assume I was giving this lecture in a lecture hall, and there were some people who really didn't like me. It would be dangerous for me.
Maybe, but we can talk about open clauses.
Yeah, and on college campuses, it's not so pleasant for many of the Jewish students who are being called Nazis and all kinds of things. So to say that it's not present would be a lie. But remember that pyramid of hate. You can start with the simple stuff, but it gets pretty intense toward the top of that pyramid.
But actually, in the university or something like that, you have societies who do not accept Jews anymore, okay? And that is totally unacceptable. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
No, I just want to say I'm a member of
No,
Temple
I'm
Beth
okay,
David
I'm
in
okay.
Westwood, as well as a Norwood resident. And I just realized maybe that everybody doesn't know that in every temple I've been to in the last years, we have to hire a policeman.
Absolutely.
So we pay $50, $60 an hour
That's
for
true.
every service. So we walk in to pray, to have a meal, to go to a lecture. My niece had a bar mitzvah in Gloucester, and the first thing you meet is a policeman, and several temple members have been trained. Not that it's necessarily dangerous every second, but that when you read about these anonymous bombings and assaults in temples, it's made everybody. So it just hit me that maybe people don't realize that almost every temple here is now hiring policemen.
Yes.
We just performed the Diary of Anne Frank at Temple Sinai in Sharon. And because there's the, you know, the play was performed, there are 3 versions of the play, the story is essentially the same. It was performed, I believe, in Ohio a year and a half ago, and there was an attack. I think it was by white nationalists. And so to do the play, we paid, the theater group paid for a policeman $100 an hour for every performance. And the fact that you have to have that, there have been a few incidences at the temple. We've been very, I hate to say fortunate, because it's like, why should we even have to think that way? But it's an interesting, that, you know, if you had ever told me, you know, I'm very young, but if you had ever told me years ago that we would even be having this discussion, I would have been, oh, come on, we took care of that. Years ago, we took care of this right, we took care of gay rights, we took care of black rights, and everybody's, you know, come on. It's just phenomenal.
Sorry, you had your hand up.
Yes, I have a question. Watching TV, it's very upsetting. Barnard College yesterday in New York, in Boston, where we had all summer. Why doesn't the Combined Jewish Philanthropies and the Anti-Defamation League get involved? Why don't
They
they
do.
go?
They're
and
heavily
stop
involved.
it?
They're heavily
Why
involved.
don't they go and stop these kids?
You-
Expel them?
But you can, first of all, okay, the CJP and the ATL cannot go and expel kids in a college, okay?
No, but
They-
but
But they are very involved, okay? Now, our presentation has been sort of sponsored loosely by the ADL, okay? We are a subgroup.
Sponsored, basically, access to information,
Right.
that's
You go and do your stuff, okay?
whatever you want to do.
Whatever you want to do locally, you try to do it locally, and I really appreciate very much how many people are here. This is absolutely amazing. And we're very fortunate that we don't have anyone who comes to attack us, because that was one of the worries that I had.
Rosette, would you and Marty address our visit up at the Morrill High School?
Oh, yeah. You have a very impressive high school here. In all seriousness, we gave a talk similar to this, not exactly the same, to the vice principal, the associate principal, and the
Head of the social studies.
head of social studies. And what was really, really impressive is how much they teach about anti-Semitism in the Norwood public school system. And we were very, very impressed by that. And it isn't always the case in other school systems. And I won't be specific about that.
But what is interesting is Norwood has put in, I believe Teresa Drummey started something at the elementary levels. You know, and it's certainly not, you know, it's not showing obviously graphic pictures or anything like that, but there's some type of an introduction to the idea of hating someone because they're different than you are, and what that means, and taking it a little bit further. And then there's another course at the junior high level, and then at the high school, they also look at the Holocaust, but they look at all kinds of, unfortunately, terrible happenings that have happened in the world, like Rwanda, like the Armenian genocide, like, you know, and so they put them within the context of how did this come to be? How did we get here? You know, we all say, how could that possibly happen?
Yeah, and the thing, they also, if I talk to you afterward, they also have, they talk a lot about the Holocaust, okay? They give you quite a lot of, 3 different times, like Beth was saying, talking at the elementary school, middle school, and high school. The Holocaust and anti-Semitism have been quite associated to, but learning about the Holocaust is not learning how to not be or be anti-Semitic. Okay, it's not everything. You really need to give more information than that.
It's been documented that there is often a disconnect, that the Holocaust was one thing that happened, but it really has nothing to do with anti-Semitism.
Okay, sir?
No,
Oh, wait a second.
This
Yeah.
guy wanted to have, this guy was.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah.
Just touching back on the security issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are all aware as well, like the schools that have buzzer systems, you cannot get in. I enjoy driving down the street on a Sunday morning and seeing church doors wide open. But when I have to go to my synagogue, I can't, not only the police officer, I have to wait for somebody to buzz me in at any time.
Right.
There's just that security level is so great.
Sorry.
I can provide context for some of what people have said. Why can't we do more on campus? Because there's a conflict between freedom of speech
Right.
and freedom of academics. And a lot of campuses haven't decided how that works out since October 7th. I come from a temple outside Boston. $150,000 is spent each year on security. And we had a fraction of that a few years ago. So what could we have done with $150,000 to better use that? The ADL just this week came out with a report on anti-Semitism across college campuses. So you can go up and look at, pick a school, and it'll give you a grade of A to F as to how they're handling anti-Semitism.
Yes, sir.
You know, it doesn't help when all these world organizations accuse Israel of that word genocide. That just turns, it's despicable that they use these organizations, World Health Organization, because they're killing Palestinians. Why are they killing Palestinians? Because of what you said, they're embedded.
And it is horrible.
So what are they gonna do?
Palestinians are being killed.
Yeah, I mean,
But it's awful.
we're not jumping up and down in joy. I mean, it's very sad. But, you know, the situation is sad. Yes.
Hi, I have a question for Ms. Rosette.
Yes.
I would love to know from your perspective.
Excuse me, I don't hear you well.
Sorry, okay. I'd love to know from your perspective,
Yes.
with what's going on in the country now, what do you think is the most dangerous thing that's happening? There's a lot of choices, but what's the most dangerous? And then what can we do locally, nationally, you know, to work against that?
Okay. What is the most difficult is that basically for Jews, and
Yes.
I'm not saying that we all are Jews here or whatever, we don't have to. I hope that we are, some are and some are not. But,
Rosette, could you use the microphone?
okay, yes, sorry, Mary. Yeah, what I think that one of the most difficult thing that happens to us right now is that there's anti-Semitism, and the word anti-Semitism has been trying to be replaced by Jew hate, okay, which I don't like to use too much, but that what happens is that we have people who hate us from the left and from the right. Okay, so it's not like it used to be the white nationalism, which is really the people who hate us, but we have not people from both sides who hate us. So the thing that we can do, and that we decided to do, Marty and I, is we can present what we know about it. We have lived in Israel. We have lived. I've lived in Europe. We know from the world what it is and what can happen, and it's scary. That's all I can say. It's scary. For us, we have decided that we're gonna try to present it as much as we can. We have presented that talk to 3 police chiefs and some of their people. We have presented it to some towns.
boards of
yeah, Randolph. We have presented it to some schools, like of which Norwood was our most successful presentation, besides this one.
It's not a school.
It's not a school, but
The library is a school
yeah.
in a way.
yeah, no, but that's what we decided that we could do. I have no clue what else we could do. Just
I'm gonna say, Rosette said to me, I don't know how many months ago, and you just said to me, if somebody says that they want to kill
me, I believe it. Okay, yeah,
kill me or
I
kill
believe it.
Jews, I believe them.
And the reason I believe it, because they have killed all my family. Okay, and now about me, just to figure out who am I. I'll give you 5 minutes, or maybe 3 minutes, or maybe less. Look at my family. Okay, my father was taken and he jumped from the train to Auschwitz. My mother was taken and she escaped from prison and she wound up whatever. My sisters were hidden children. My grandmother was forgotten in transit camp, and she was exchanged against as a Russian. Now she's from Ukraine. Okay, as a Russian, she was exchanged against German soldiers.
Explain about your sisters. Not everyone knows what hidden children are.
Okay, hidden children, our kids were taken and separated from the parents because it was too dangerous to put them together with the parents, and they were hidden in families or whatever, people that were putting themselves at real risk.
And your family didn't know who had, the girls were separated, these were little girls. They were separated to 2 different families. And nobody, no one knew who.
They were in one
any
family.
names.
They were in one family.
I'm sorry,
but they
that
were-
was separate.
Yeah,
But the names were not known because that was one of the
Oh, they
ways
didn't-
that you
yeah.
And
protected.
just to put a ecumenical twist on this,
I was-
Rosette was conceived in a convent.
Yeah, I was conceived in a convent. Right. If
And I always say, when I write a book, that is going to be the opening line.
So I have my story also of Holocaust, which is separate from the rest of my family, but that's another story. So basically, why did we talk about that? That wasn't
Interesting fact.
Yeah, just some facts, okay. So yeah, I believe when people say I'm going to kill you, I believe it.
Any other questions?
This may not be appropriate at the moment, but how did you get from the concentration camps to America?
She wasn't.
I was never in a concentration camp. Neither were my parents. No one was in a concentration camp. I'm not old enough to have been in a concentration camp.
But she was in an
I
orphanage.
didn't think so, but okay.
No. And how did I get to America? I got quite a few times. I came and begged and came and
No,
went.
so
and
how
came
did
and
you
went.
get there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
married this guy.
Although I'm not from Massachusetts, I'm from the Midwest, so.
Marty's family actually knew Golda Meir.
So
Yes.
I want to thank you for speaking out. If you reach even one person and have them think or do something, you're doing something. And I think you've reached more than one person.
I appreciate it.
And I say this from the bottom of my heart. My parents were both Holocaust survivors. Both my parents survived Auschwitz.
Wow.
I personally, someone like me wrote a book and said, I didn't live my parents' lives, but I've truly been affected. I'm obsessed by the life I didn't live. And your description touches me in terms of the relatives you don't have. I didn't have grandparents. I didn't have aunts or uncles. My parents were both the sole survivors of their families. I know I'm biased toward my parents, but I think there was something in their hearts that once they survived, they saw what bigotry and hatred did to them, and they became the opposite. Everyone was welcome in their house. They were very active in the survivor organization in Boston. They were active in standing up for civil rights, all the things you've mentioned, that when they saw anyone affected by bigotry and hatred, whatever they could do for them or stand up for them or help them, they were there. Later in life, I married a Catholic man. And people said to me, "What did your parents say?" I said, "My parents said, we're so happy you found a wonderful man that you love and he loves you." And so I was very lucky to have parents who became who they were. Not that I recommend their
You know what?
their journey, but I hope that I learned a lot from them.
No, I really cannot tell you how much I appreciate what you're saying, because with all what my family went through, I had a very nice childhood. I had a wonderful childhood. It wasn't. My parents were really great people.
And so, so many stories are different,
Yeah.
but keep doing what you're doing and reaching out, because one person at a time, it's my personal belief, you can change the world, even if it's just one person at a time. So I thank all of you for being here.
I'm going to add something to that, if I may. I'm jumping in here because I've had so many people say to me, in instances
Can you
when
try to talk as loud as possible?
in instances when people have said something to me prejudicial against another human being because they're transgender, because they're a person of color, we could just do the whole gamut. And I said, well, don't say anything. You always say something. And all my cronies here, I'm sure, are going to laugh hysterically because they say that. Oh, Beth was being quiet. And I refuse. And I always have. I try not to be rude, but to stand there and not say anything is saying it's okay. And I refuse to do that.
Good for you.
Sorry, sir.
And so people learn by example. And that's the other thing I would bring out, is that you can't legislate
No, you
love
can't.
and what's in a person's heart. It has to start in the family. So if parents teach their kids to be polite, but then the kids see the parents swearing at the television at somebody they don't like, what does the kid really learn? So it really has to start in a family where there's love. And I don't have all the answers, but that's a good place to start.
Please.
I don't know if you know who I am, but my name is Joshua Roy, and I've been a partner and owner of 2 kosher markets, Brookline and in Canton.
Excuse me, that boy over there, his bar mitzvah. Most of it I got at door markets.
I grew up in Morrill. I witnessed myself hatred, anti-Semitism. I was in fights. I was stabbed. I had many issues, but I always took the high road. I looked the other way, and I was always told, if you see something, you just walk or run. But I've been part of 2 kosher businesses, family by the Gellermans. First in Brookline, I married into the business. I started there in 1991. My first mission while I was working there was to listen to every Holocaust survivor that came into the store, to listen to their stories, regardless of how long or how short it was, and to remember their stories. We also started a catering company where we did catering events for Holocaust survivors. We started in 2001, I believe, or 2002. There were about 400 survivors with family. And it was all paid for by the German government. By the time we finished, there was maybe 100 survivors left, or less. And it stopped, unfortunately, because everybody was getting too old. But the stories that I learned and I listened to, I will never forget. I passed these stories on to my own children. My father-in-law, Jack Ellerman, and his brothers and sisters were all Holocaust survivors. Their parents owned 2 butcher shops in Poland. One was kosher, the other side was non-kosher. It was a smart move. When the Germans were coming to invade, their 2 butchers on the non-kosher side came to Jack's parents and said, "You have 2 choices. You can run, or you can stay, and we'll kill you before the Germans get here." So they packed everything up and they ran. They were always 5 feet in front of the Germans. They were hidden in places. My father-in-law told me a story about how the Germans were searching a house and they were all upstairs in the attic. And my father-in-law, of 6 years of age, asked his father, "What's this box?" And father wouldn't say anything. And after the Germans had left, he asked someone else, "What is in this box?" He said, "It's soap. It's Jewish soap. It's made from humans." And the stories can go on and on and on. It's something I'll never forget. Like I said, anti-Semitism has been on the rise here for a long period of time. There used to be a Independence Day festival on Harvard Street in Brookline. Used to draw 10 to 12,000 people. Over the years, it was celebrated there for about 5 years, and then there were protesters. As soon as the protesters came, Brookline said, "We can't protect you." They moved it to Cleveland Circle for 1 year. The protesters were larger in size. And that was the end of the large outdoor Independence Day festivals that used to take place. And anti-Semitism has grown for a long, long period of time. And it's horrible to see what's happening today. And only people who are informed and learn and understand the situation, we are the only ones who can really pass it on to other people. And the more we pass it on to other people, hopefully the message will grow. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Sorry? Yes.
Yeah.
I am one person. I came in here believing and thinking, due to media influences, that there was a genocide in Palestine in this recent conflict.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to think about it differently, thanks to your information. And I'm wondering if you all can understand how just regular people, I'm not Jewish, just regular people can come to that conclusion based on the media. Do you understand how people can think that?
Yeah, well, in Germany, Goebbels was very successful in, bringing the major German population against the Jews. It's propaganda, and propaganda works. You repeat lies often enough,
They become the truth.
they become real.
And the thing, the difference is that, for instance, Israel, and again, like my husband, whatever, I'm not giving a blank thing to Israel that whatever that this is right, but what they do is they do not get information out unless they verified. Hamas has been giving information out, not verified, and you find it in all the newspapers here. Okay?
Yeah, like hospitals were bombed.
Yeah,
They weren't bombed.
like the New York Times was, I believe, quite neutral, has become non-neutral.
Yeah.
The problem is the media is, they're looking for a sensation.
I think it is, I'll just speak for myself. It is horrific to see pictures, video, or stills in the paper where people recounting what's happened to them. You see children involved. And for me, there is never, you can't make anything sound good, and you shouldn't when a child is killed. Hamas and other groups, unfortunately, and they're not the only groups, other groups do it all around the world against other people, use their own people for political means. They don't care about their people. How come they don't have any food? This isn't new that they don't have food, because the money went into making weapons. This is not something new, and it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. It is heartbreaking.
First of all, I'd like to, just one second. I'd like to thank you, because that's the whole purpose of why we're here.
Yes, I appreciate what you said, because you learned something.
I did.
And you helped teach her that, and so it's appreciated and it works,
Thank you.
even one person at a time.
Being for the state of Israel as a Jewish state does not mean you support the government.
Of course not.
And that's
Exactly not.
some of the confusion that exists, that not everybody.
Why don't you generalize that? I won't go there.
Antisemitism in Israel, they go and protest weekly against the government.
Thousands and thousands
Yeah,
of
right.
people.
But I would like to ask, and I appreciate especially what you said. I would like to ask people here, what did they learn today here? Yes?
Not be afraid to accept other people's ways or other people's thoughts and things that they do on a daily basis. We all are individuals, and each one of us has something like, I don't think they like me because I'm
Whatever.
So it's tolerance that you taught tonight.
Thank you for coming.
And if you see something, you have to say something.
Right.
Right,
If
right.
you see that somebody is being, I don't care who it is, but being harassed because they're Jewish or they're black, you get involved and you say something. I can relate to this gentleman over here. My son was going to school here, and he was going for his bar mitzvah. And he was maybe 11, 12 years old. And every day he would say to me, "Ma, I got a stomach ache, I'm not going to school." I said to him, "Wayne, you gotta go to school." He would not get on the school bus. He walked to school every day because the kids were harassing him on the bus. I came home from work one day and all my bedroom windows were smashed. And my neighbor said, there were kids up on the hill in back of me yelling for Wayne to come out. They wanted to beat him up and calling him a dirty Jew. I went into work that day and I got on the phone and I called Lenny Zampin's office. Within a half hour, he called me back. He wanted to know what was going on. Within 2 days, he had a meeting with the Norwood School Department and told what was going on and said, if you don't do something about what's going on, no child should have to be harassed going to school. I don't care what they are. And if I hear that this child is being harassed again, I'm taking it all over the Boston area. And it stopped. James Savage sent home a letter. And it was sad. And I took my son to the temple here. And it broke my heart. He said to the rabbi, why did people hate Jewish people so much? What did we do? And the rabbi said, we didn't do anything. Those are ignorant people.
Sorry,
I do.
Good.
I'm very deaf, and I don't know how loud I am speaking.
Good.
Fine.
Good, good.
And
I'm glad I have my here.
I am probably the oldest person here.
I'm 91.
I'm 90, I'll be 95 in May. There was a pogo cartoon where the king and his associate were standing on the tower. And the associate looked at the king and said, "We have met the enemy, and it is us." I have faced anti-Semitism since I was probably a young child. My father traveled in the eastern part of the United States, and my mother was once asked if she had a tail. That story lived with me. I lived in a small town, and there were sections in Winthrop. Sections of the town I was not allowed to go to and never entered until 1978. I also worked at Boston City Hospital, where I was the only Jew in a laboratory, the only non-Christian in a laboratory there were 10 of us. And that was an experience. I went at Lent, so I wouldn't be all alone. I went to church with all my friends, my co-workers, and they would dare me to go up.
So
that's not mine.
Yeah. How long do we have?
My mother's family moved to Israel in the mid-1800s. My family is still there. When they emigrated, it was under the Ottoman regime. It was before World War I.
Tell your connection.
Israel.
I'm interrupting you because I'm interrupting you. You lovely person, you. I'm interrupting you. I want you to tell people what your connection is to the library here. Tell them that, and they're about, well, not just your husband, what you did in the library too. What you did in the library.
What you did in the library.
What I did?
Yes, you
I
took.
didn't.
Yes, you did.
Wheels on wheels in Norway.
But you also took books to
I
people.
put together the program, but that's my husband. Is that what you-
But you took books to people. You worked in outreach. You volunteered. That's how I met you. Well, I met you first.
Books to people.
Oh, I volunteered, yes.
So thank you. Just say about,
My husband was a trustee at the library for many, many, many years.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Point I would like to make is A, anti-Semitism has been with us forever. And it's still here. It was underground. People didn't express their feelings until someone opened Pandora's box and everything flew out. and it has escalated since then. Most young people who march have no idea of Jewish, of non-Jews, have no idea how Israel began. When my family first was there, it was Palestine, it wasn't Israel. We haven't taught them history, and they have no idea what the background of Israel really is.
And that is something
Oh.
we've talked about, that we hope
I'm done.
people will be.